Captain Drezz Valknar of the pirate vessel Crimson Talon stared at the holographic display with 8 of his eyes while using his remaining 2 to monitor his bridge crew. His mandibles clicked in anticipation. After 3 unprofitable weeks prowling the Cygnus Theta shipping lanes, they'd finally located a potential prize. "Report," he chittered, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh bridge lighting. Lieutenant Gorks, a squat green blob with 17 sensory appendages, gurgled as he analyzed the data. "Single transport vessel, Captain. Medium class. Minimal defense systems. No escort ships." A series of bubbles popped from his speech orifice. "Sensors indicate. Wait, that can't be right. Speak, Lieutenant, or I'll have your gelatinous hide recycled into coolant." It's a human ship, sir." The bridge fell silent. Several crew members involuntarily extended their defense mechanisms. "Human." First Officer Krell hissed from her perch, her reptilian tail swishing nervously against the deck. "Perhaps we should reconsider, Captain. The Draconian Collective lost 3 warships to a single human freighter last cycle. Those are just stories." Drezz dismissed with a wave of his upper right appendage. "Propaganda spread by the humans themselves." "What about the incident at Proxima Station?" Navigator Blurm gurgled, his eye stalks retracting slightly into his protective carapace. "They say a human trade vessel was cornered by the Varghul fleet. 12 ships against 1. When it was over, the human vessel continued on its scheduled route with nothing but a polite apology for the delay." "Superstitious nonsense," Drezz snapped, though he couldn't help remembering the footage he'd seen of the aftermath. The Galactic Council had classified most of it, but the images of the Varghul debris field had circulated widely. Clearly a reactor malfunction. "Captain," Krell persisted, "there must be a reason why human vessels always travel alone. No other species in the known galaxy follows this practice." Drezz slammed his chitinous fist on the arm of his command chair. "The reason is obvious. Their Terran alliance is too arrogant to share resources, too selfish to travel in convoys like civilized species." He rose to his full height, towering over his nervous crew. "And it makes them perfect targets." He swiveled toward the tactical console where Weapons Officer Plex was pretending not to listen. "Scan for identification." Plex's 6-fingered hands danced across the controls. Terran transport vessel Boundless Optimism, registered out of Mars colony. "Cargo." He paused, confusion spreading across his facial ridges. "Cargo listed simply as cultural exchange materials." "Cultural exchange," Drezz laughed, a sound like grinding stones that made several junior officers flinch. "Perfect. Artwork. Historical artifacts. Perhaps even those human movies they guard so jealously. All highly valuable on the black market." "Sir," Communications Officer Zreep squeaked, adjusting her translator implant, "regulations require that I inform you that attacking a human vessel violates Section 12B of the Galactic Piracy Code." "The code is more of a guideline," Drezz replied, moving to the forward viewport to gaze at the distant speck of the human ship. "Besides, none of you have actually encountered humans before, have you?" Silence answered him. "As I thought. These rumors spread by those who want to keep the richest prizes for themselves." His mandibles clicked rapidly in what passed for a smile among his species. "Prepare boarding parties, shields at maximum. We take the Boundless Optimism in 20 minutes. As his crew scurried to obey, Drezz couldn't help but wonder why the humans insisted on such whimsical names for their vessels. Such sentimentality was surely a weakness, and weaknesses were meant to be exploited. He had no idea how profoundly he would come to regret this decision. "Tell me again why we're doing this," Gorks bubbled nervously, as the Crimson Talon closed in on its prey. His gelatinous form quivered slightly, causing ripples across his control console. "Because," Captain Drezz explained with exaggerated patience, "we are pirates. Pirates take valuable things from ships. That ship has valuable things. Therefore, we take." He clicked his mandibles in frustration. "Has your species evolved beyond simple syllogisms?" First Officer Krell slithered closer, her scales catching the red alert lighting. "Captain, I've been reviewing the historical database. There are 47 documented attempts to raid human vessels in the last galactic cycle, 0 successful outcomes. And how many of those attempts were made by the Crimson Talon?" Drezz countered. "None, sir." "Precisely." Drezz pointed a clawed appendage at the view screen. "We have a perfect record, because we choose our targets carefully and execute flawlessly, or because we've avoided humans until now," Weapons Officer Plex muttered under his breath. Drezz pretended not to hear. "Communications," Hail the vessel. Standard surrender protocol. Zreep adjusted her translator implant and cleared her throat equivalent. Ahem. Terran vessel Boundless Optimism. This is the independent salvage ship Crimson Talon. Your vessel has been selected for immediate resource redistribution. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with escalated redistribution measures. That doesn't sound very threatening. Navigator Blurm commented, eye stalks swiveling. The translator makes everything sound polite and human standard. Zreep explained. In reality, I just threatened to vaporize their reproductive organs. A moment of silence passed before the view screen flickered. A human face appeared, pink-skinned, hair-topped, and disconcertingly symmetrical. The human wore a simple gray uniform, with blue piping, and a relaxed expression that seemed entirely inappropriate for someone being threatened by notorious space pirates. Hello there, Crimson Talon, the human said pleasantly. This is Captain Morgan Reynolds of the Boundless Optimism. I understand you're interested in our cargo. Drezz blinked all 10 eyes in sequence. This wasn't the panicked response he'd expected. Human, he chittered authoritatively. Your ship and its contents are now property of the Crimson Talon. Surrender immediately. Or, yes, or you'll do something terrible to our reproductive organs. Reynolds interrupted with a dismissive wave. Look, we're on a tight schedule delivering these cultural materials to the Andromedan embassy. Could we perhaps speed this along? Your boarding procedure, I mean. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Are they inviting us to rob them? Krell whispered. It's a trap. Gorks gurgled, his entire body now vibrating with anxiety. Captain Reynolds sighed on screen. I assure you it's not a trap. You're what, the third pirate vessel this month? Always the same song and dance. Just dock at airlock C7, and we'll have everything ready for you. Drezz narrowed his primary hunting eyes. Everything ready. Of course, this is a cultural exchange vessel. We're quite used to sharing. Reynolds smiled, showing too many teeth for comfort. I'll have my first officer meet your boarding party. He's particularly enthusiastic about cultural exchange. The transmission cut before Drezz could respond. That was strange. Zreep squeaked. Perhaps they're surrendering to save their lives. Plex suggested hopefully. Unlikely. Krell hissed. Humans are known for their stubbornness. There are legends of a human defending a position for days using nothing but a pointed stick and harsh language. Drezz tapped his mandibles thoughtfully. Or perhaps they know their cargo isn't worth dying for. Cultural trinkets. Probably replicas anyway. He turned to Plex. Scan the vessel again. Any weapons? Standard point defense lasers. Powered down. No torpedo tubes. No fighter bays. Plex ran his 6 fingers through the holographic display. It's just a transport, sir. Crew complement appears to be only 12. That can't be right. A vessel that size typically requires at least 50. Automation, Drezz declared confidently. Humans love their robots. All the more reason to proceed. Fewer witnesses, more profit. He rose from his command chair. Krell, Gorks, Plex, you're with me. Boarding party of 20. Light weapons only. Let's not damage the merchandise. You're leading the boarding party personally. Krell's forked tongue flicked out in surprise. I want to see these humans up close, Drezz replied. I want to look in their eyes when they realize they're not the untouchable species they think they are. As the boarding party assembled, Navigator Blurm nervously approached the captain. Sir, what if the rumors are true? What if there's a reason human ships always travel alone? Drezz patted the navigator's carapace condescendingly. Think about it logically. If humans had some secret weapon or defense system, wouldn't they boast about it? Humans brag about everything. Their music, their food, their bizarre mating rituals. Unless Blurm's eye stalks drooped in worry, the secret is so terrible that even humans don't like to discuss it. Superstitious nonsense, Drezz scoffed, checking his plasma pistol. By this time tomorrow we'll be rich, and the galaxy will know that the Crimson Talon was the first to successfully plunder a human vessel. As they approached the airlock, Drezz couldn't help but notice that the Boundless Optimism seemed eerily quiet for a ship under attack. Almost as if it were waiting for something. Or someone. The airlock hissed open with a sound that reminded Drezz of the death rattle of a Jovian swamp beast. He instinctively raised his plasma pistol, expecting resistance, traps, or at minimum a red alert klaxon. Instead, soft music drifted through the opening. Something with strings and gentle percussion that Drezz's cultural database identified as classical jazz fusion, Earth origin, mid-22nd century. They're playing music. Lieutenant Gorks bubbled, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. Stay alert, Drezz commanded, mandibles tight with suspicion. This could be psychological warfare. The boarding party cautiously entered the Boundless Optimism, weapons raised, senses heightened. The corridor before them was brightly lit, immaculately clean, and adorned with what appeared to be framed artwork. A small robotic unit, presumably a cleaning drone, hummed past them, paused as if noticing the armed intruders, then continued on its programmed path. Shouldn't the atmospheric security systems have engaged by now? First Officer Krell hissed, her reptilian eyes darting suspiciously around the corridor. Perhaps they malfunctioned, Weapons Officer Plex offered hopefully, his 6 fingers nervously adjusting the settings on his disruptor rifle. Before Drezz could respond, a cheerful voice called out from around the corner. "Ah, there you are, welcome aboard the Boundless Optimism." A human male strode confidently toward them. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark skin and a neatly trimmed beard. His uniform matched Captain Reynolds, though with red piping instead of blue. First Officer Marcus Chen, he introduced himself, extending a hand toward Drezz in what the captain recognized as a human greeting ritual. "You must be the," Chen coughed into his other hand. "Independent salvage specialists." Drezz ignored the outstretched hand, leveling his plasma pistol at Chen's face. "We are pirates of the Crimson Talon, and this vessel is now under our control." Chen's smile didn't falter. Of course, though technically you've only claimed this corridor so far." He gestured expansively. "There's a whole ship to salvage. Shall I give you the tour?" Drezz exchanged confused glances with his officers. This was not going according to any piracy protocol he was familiar with. "This is a trick," Gorks gurgled nervously. "Humans are devious. My third brood parent lost 2 sensory stocks in a game of poker with a human." "No tricks," Chen assured them, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Just efficiency. Captain Reynolds thought you might appreciate a guided tour to the most valuable items. Save everyone some time." "We will locate the valuables ourselves," Drezz declared, trying to regain control of the situation. "Take us to your bridge." "As you wish," Chen shrugged, "though the cargo holds would be more profitable. But you're the pirates." As they marched through the corridors, Drezz became increasingly unsettled. The ship was immaculate, with none of the usual signs of a vessel under duress. Crew members they passed merely nodded politely, or stepped aside with minimal concern. One human female even offered them refreshments from a tray. "Water? Coffee? We have some excellent Arcturian tea," she suggested pleasantly. "We're not here for beverages," Drezz snapped, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "We're here to pillage and plunder." Of course she nodded understandingly. The tea would be complimentary though. After declining the refreshments with what he hoped was intimidating snarls, Drezz pulled his officers into a huddle. "Something is very wrong here," he chittered quietly. "No one behaves this way during a pirate raid." "Maybe humans don't understand the concept," Plex suggested. "Or maybe they're stalling," Krell hissed, her tail twitching nervously. Waiting for reinforcements. Gorks's entire body had gone a paler shade of green. "I've heard stories about humans who smile while they're plotting your demise." Drezz straightened his exoskeleton and turned back to Chen. "Enough distractions. Show us these cargo holds you mentioned." "Certainly," Chen replied, leading them toward a large elevator. "We're currently transporting quite the diverse collection. Art, literature, historical artifacts, oh, and of course the entertainment package." "Entertainment package," Drezz repeated. "Yes, primarily media. Films, music, games. Humans are quite prolific content creators." Chen stepped into the elevator and gestured for them to follow. "The Andromedan Embassy specifically requested our latest releases. They're particularly fond of something called reality television. Can't understand the appeal myself." The elevator descended smoothly, and Drezz noted with growing paranoia that none of his crew had been challenged, attacked, or even mildly inconvenienced since boarding. A successful raid required resistance to overcome, treasures to seize, and terrified victims to intimidate. So far they had encountered none of these essential elements. When the elevator doors opened, they revealed a vast cargo hold, filled with neatly organized containers, each labeled in multiple languages including Standard Galactic. "Here we are," Chen announced. "Cargo hold C, cultural materials section. The art pieces are in the climate-controlled units to your left. Historical artifacts, straight ahead. Entertainment media to the right." Drezz approached one of the containers and cautiously examined its label. "Earth Classical Film Collection, 1900 to 2050. This is valuable?" "Oh, extremely," Chen nodded enthusiastically. "Particularly the category humans call cult classics. There's a collector on Betelgeuse 7, who paid 6 months' worth of antimatter fuel for just one film called The Room." Plex scanned another container. "This one contains something called Internet Meme Historical Archive." "Ah, yes," Chen chuckled. "That's actually my personal favorite. A comprehensive collection of human humor from the digital age. The Andromedan ambassador's third spouse is writing a thesis on it." Drezz was beginning to feel that this raid had spiraled beyond his control. "Where are your weapons, your valuable technology, your secrets of human dominance?" Chen looked genuinely puzzled. "This is a cultural exchange vessel, Captain. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name." "Captain Drezz Valknar of the Crimson Talon." Drezz replied automatically, then immediately regretted revealing him. "Captain Valknar," Chen continued. "We don't transport weapons or classified technology on cultural missions. That would violate at least 6 interstellar treaties." Drezz's frustration peaked. He grabbed Chen by the collar of his uniform and lifted the human off the ground, bringing their faces close together. "Stop this charade. No species surrenders this easily. What are you hiding?" For the first time Chen's pleasant expression faltered, not into fear, as Drezz had hoped, but into something more concerning, pity. Captain Chen said quietly, "We're not hiding anything. We're simply following protocol for cultural exchange vessels when intercepted. But I should probably mention that you haven't been scanning the correct cargo manifest." "What?" Drezz's mandibles twitched in confusion. "The manifest you accessed was for the diplomatic mission," Chen explained, "but we're also carrying a secondary cargo. It's listed under supplementary manifests. Subsection Theta 9. A cold feeling crept along Drezz's exoskeleton. "What supplementary cargo?" Chen glanced at a nearby container, one significantly larger than the others and marked with symbols Drezz didn't recognize. "That one, for instance. It's not technically cultural exchange material, though some might argue otherwise." Gorks had inched closer to the container and was examining the warning labels. His gelatinous form suddenly went rigid. "Captain," he burbled urgently, "you need to see this." Drezz released Chen and moved to the container. There, beneath various hazard symbols and several paragraphs of fine print, was a simple label that made his blood run cold. "Experiment PX-41, Human Entertainment Delivery System, Prototype," and below that in smaller text, "Warning contains 11 Kevin." Drezz looked back at Chen, who was straightening his uniform with a resigned expression. "What?" Drezz asked slowly, "is a Kevin?" Before Chen could answer, the container emitted a mechanical click. Something inside had just woken up. The container door slid open with a pneumatic hiss that reminded Drezz of the sound predatory Ventralian marsh wraiths make just before striking. The pirate crew instinctively backed away, weapons raised. "Oh dear," First Officer Chen sighed. "It seems Kevin's awake." "What is a Kevin?" Drezz demanded again, all 10 eyes fixed on the dark opening of the container. "Kevin is technically a person," Chen explained, retreating toward the elevator with casual yet deliberate steps. Though phenomenon might be more accurate. A voice emerged from the container, oddly cheerful, distinctly human, and somehow immediately irritating. "Hello? Is it time for my cultural presentation already?" A human male stepped out, blinking in the cargo bay lights. He appeared unremarkable by human standards. Average height, pale skin with freckles, thinning reddish hair, and a physique that suggested more time spent with food than exercise. He wore a garish shirt covered in what Drezz's cultural database identified as pineapples and flamingos, paired with shorts that stopped well above the knee. "Who are these fellas?" the human asked, gesturing toward the armed pirates with a broad smile. "New audience? Fantastic. I've been working on my interspecies material." First Officer Chen cleared his throat. "Kevin, these are pirates. They've boarded our vessel with the intention of stealing our cargo." "Pirates?" Kevin exclaimed with inappropriate enthusiasm. "Like in the movies? With the parrots and the R and the walking the plank, do you guys do the walking the plank thing? I've always wondered about the logistics of that in space. Drezz stared in bewilderment. This is your secret weapon, an unarmed, physically unimpressive human male weapon? Kevin laughed. I'm not a weapon, I'm an entertainment specialist. Kevin Flanagan, Cultural Envoy Grade 3, at your service. He extended his hand for shaking, oblivious to the plasma pistols aimed at his vital organs. Gorks's gelatinous form rippled with confusion. I don't understand the threat assessment. That's because there isn't one, Drezz snapped, frustration mounting. He turned to Chen. What kind of game are you playing, human? Chen was now standing safely inside the elevator, his finger hovering near the door control. Captain Valknar, I should mention that Kevin is considered a strategic asset by the Terran Alliance. His deployment falls under the proportional responses doctrine of our defense protocols. Proportional to what? Drezz demanded. To piracy, Chen replied simply, as the elevator doors began to close. Standard exposure is calculated at 4 hours. After that we'll need to negotiate terms for his retrieval. Good luck, Captain. Wait. Drezz lunged toward the closing doors but was too late. So, Kevin clapped his hands together. Pirates, that's just fantastic. I've prepared several presentations on Earth culture. Which would you prefer? I've got the complete evolution of dance music, memes that shaped history, or my personal favorite, cats why we can't stop watching them. Weapons Officer Plex lowered his disruptor rifle slightly. Is this torture? Don't be absurd, Drezz chittered, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. Humans are physically incapable of torture, their ethical programming prevents it. Kevin pulled a small device from his pocket. I also have 17,000 family vacation photos I can share. Let me just find the ones from our trip to Disney Moon. Stand back, Drezz ordered, raising his plasma pistol. We are here for valuable cargo, not whatever this is. Oh, you want the valuable stuff? Kevin's eyes lit up. I'm authorized to demonstrate all premium content. Let me show you our top-tier entertainment packages. Before any of the pirates could stop him, Kevin tapped his device. A holographic projection filled the cargo bay, surrounding them with images, sounds, and strangely catchy musical snippets that seemed designed to lodge permanently in one's brain. This is our classic earworms collection, Kevin explained, as a particularly repetitive tune about someone named Baby Shark played for the 12th consecutive time. The Andromedan ambassador's children absolutely loved this one. First Officer Krell's reptilian composure was cracking. Make it stop, she hissed, her scales flattening against her body. Stop? But we've just started. Kevin enthusiastically switched to a new program. This is our debate topics that never resolve simulation. Let's start with the classic, which is the correct way to hang toilet paper over or under. 2 hours later, the situation in the car had deteriorated significantly. 3 of Drezz's boarding party had retreated to the Crimson Talon, claiming acute sensory distress. Lieutenant Gorks had solidified into a defensive hibernation sphere. Weapons Officer Plex was huddled in a corner, all 6 fingers jammed into his auditory receptors, rocking back and forth. Only First Officer Krell maintained some semblance of composure, though her tail now twitched uncontrollably whenever Kevin used the phrase, just one more slide. And that's why humans consider pineapple on pizza to be a moral issue worthy of multi-generational blood feuds. Kevin concluded, apparently wrapping up presentation number 17. He checked his device. Oh, I almost forgot the cornerstone of human entertainment culture, dad jokes. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Drezz, who had been staring blankly at the wall for the past 40 minutes, didn't respond. Because he was outstanding in his field. Kevin delivered the punchline with finger guns and an expectant grin. When no reaction came, he clarified, you see, it's funny because he's literally standing out in a field, but outstanding also means excellent. I understand wordplay, Drezz said hollowly. We have linguistics in other species. Great, then you'll love this one. What's the difference between enough? Drezz finally snapped, his mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. We surrender. Take your cultural exchange materials back. We don't want them. Kevin looked genuinely disappointed. But I haven't even shown you my TikTok compilation from the 2020s, or my 4-hour documentary on the evolution of unboxing videos. Drezz grabbed his communication device. Zrape, prepare the Crimson Talon for immediate departure. We're leaving without the cargo. But Captain, Zrape's voice crackled through the device, what about the cultural materials? They're not worth it, Drezz hissed. Nothing is worth this. Kevin sidled closer to Drezz, his expression suddenly conspiratorial. You know, if you guys want to leave, there's a simple way to end all this. Drezz's antenna perked up. What? Tell me. You just have to subscribe to my channel, Kevin grinned, producing a digital form. It's only 15 universal credits per month, and you get access to all my premium content, plus exclusive behind the scenes. The revelation finally dawned on Drezz, with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just cultural exchange, it was cultural weaponization. The humans had discovered something no other species had considered, that there were fates worse than death, injuries more lasting than physical wounds, and tortures more refined than pain. They had weaponized boredom. As if reading his thoughts, Kevin brightened. Oh, speaking of subscriptions, let me tell you about my podcast. It's called Kevin Talks, Everyday Observations from a Slightly Interesting Guy. We just hit episode 847. Drezz looked at the container from which Kevin had emerged and noticed for the first time a small plaque on its side. It read, Project Kevin Conversational Entertainment Vector for Interspecies Neutralization. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. This was why human ships traveled alone. Tactical retreat. Captain Drezz screeched, his mandibles clicking in rapid distress patterns that hadn't been used by his species since the Great Hive Wars. All boarding party members, fall back to extraction point Alpha. Kevin looked crestfallen. But I was just about to show you my collection of humans standing next to things for scale photos. I've got over 12,000 of them. Run. Drezz commanded his remaining officers. First Officer Krell needed no further encouragement, slithering at remarkable speed toward the cargo bay exit. Weapons Officer Plex stumbled after her, still dazed from Kevin's 40-minute exposition on the correct pronunciation of Gef. Lieutenant Gorks remained in his protective hibernation sphere. Gorks, Drezz chittered urgently, prodding the solid gelatinous ball with his foot. Wake up. We're leaving. No response. The lieutenant had gone into full cellular shutdown. We'll have to leave him, Krell hissed from the doorway. He's too far gone. No pirate left behind, Drezz insisted, attempting to roll Gorks's spherical form toward the exit. Help me with him. Actually, Kevin interjected helpfully, I have a presentation on proper lifting techniques. Let me just cue up my workplace safety. The musical slideshow. The mere threat was enough to give Drezz a surge of desperate strength. He heaved Gorks's hibernation sphere onto his shoulders and staggered toward the exit, following Krell and Plex into the corridor. Wait, Kevin called after them, hurrying to keep up. I haven't given you my business card. It has a QR code that links to my newsletter. The pirates fled through the corridors of the Boundless Optimism, their earlier bravado replaced by raw panic. Crew members they passed simply stepped aside, some offering sympathetic glances, others checking watches as if timing their exposure. The airlock should be this way, Plex panted, his 6 fingers frantically working a navigation device. I think you're going the wrong way, Kevin offered, somehow still keeping pace despite his seemingly unfit physique. But that's okay, wrong turns make for better stories, which reminds me of my 30-part series on navigation fails that will make you laugh and cringe. Drezz spotted an emergency control panel on the wall. With one free appendage, he smashed the glass and pulled the alarm lever. Sirens wailed and emergency lights flashed. What are you doing? Krell demanded. Creating a distraction, Drezz explained. Standard piracy tactic. The humans will have to respond to the emergency. A calm voice came over the ship's intercom. Attention all crew members. This is Captain Reynolds. Our guests have activated the emergency protocols. Please note that this is not a drill, but also not an actual emergency. Implement procedure Kevin 7. Rather than rushing to manage the false alarm, the crew they encountered began donning what appeared to be small earbuds. What's happening? Drezz demanded as a smiling human engineer walked past, completely ignoring the blaring alarms. Oh, that's the Kevin containment protocol, Kevin explained cheerfully. Once I'm activated, the crew is authorized to use hearing protection. It's one of my special privileges as a strategic asset. The realization that the humans had protection against their own weapon made Drezz's exoskeleton crawl with horror. There, Plex pointed ahead. I see the airlock. Hope surged through Drezz's thorax, only to be immediately crushed when he saw who was waiting for them. Captain Morgan Reynolds, flanked by 2 crew members. Leaving so soon? Reynolds asked pleasantly. But you've only experienced level 1, Kevin. There are 5 levels of escalating cultural immersion available. Let us pass, Drezz demanded, managing to sound somewhat threatening despite the hibernating Gork still balanced on his shoulders. Or we'll be forced to take hostile action. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. With what weapons? You dropped them all back in Cargo Bay C when Kevin started his evolution of dance's demonstration. Drezz glanced down, realizing with dismay that the captain was right. In their panic to escape, they had abandoned their plasma pistols and disruptor rifles. Besides, Reynolds continued, we're not stopping you. Quite the contrary, we're facilitating your departure. Standard procedure after a Kevin deployment is to ensure the affected parties can retreat with minimal additional exposure. Krell's forked tongue flicked out suspiciously. You're helping us leave? Of course, Reynolds nodded. The Terran Alliance has strict regulations about Kevin exposure limits for non-human species. 3 hours and 14 minutes is well within safety parameters, but we wouldn't want to risk any permanent psychological effects. Psychological effects, Drezz repeated, a new fear gripping him. Nothing serious, Reynolds assured him. Just potential symptoms like involuntary humming of Earth pop songs, sudden unexplained cravings for pizza, or occasional use of the phrase, back in my day when comparing technology. From behind them, Kevin's voice called out, hey guys, wait up, I just remembered I haven't shown you my collection of optical illusions that look like other things when you squint. Open the airlock, Drezz pleaded. Now, Reynolds nodded to one of his crew members, who tapped a control panel. The airlock door slid open, revealing the docking tube connecting to the Crimson Talon. Before you go, Reynolds said, his tone suddenly more serious, I should mention that this encounter will be reported to the Galactic Council, as per standard procedure. Your ship's identification has been logged, Captain Valknar. Drezz froze halfway through the airlock. What are you saying? I'm saying, Reynolds explained with a sympathetic smile, that the Crimson Talon is now flagged in the Terran database. Any future encounters with human vessels will trigger an automatic Kevin deployment. You wouldn't, Drezz whispered. Standard protocol, Reynolds shrugged. Though there is an alternative. Name it, Drezz said immediately. We have a cultural exchange initiative for reformed pirates, Reynolds explained. 6 months of community service distributing human entertainment to underserved sectors. Kevin had finally caught up, slightly out of breath but enthusiasm undimmed. It's a great program, I supervise it personally. We could be together every day, sharing the wonders of human culture throughout the galaxy. Drezz looked at the open airlock, then at Kevin's beaming face, then back at the airlock. It was the most difficult decision of his pirating career. We'll take our chances with the database flag, he declared, backing quickly through the airlock with Gork still on his shoulders. Wait, Kevin called, rushing forward. At least take my subscriber discount code. It's Kevin Parates 20 for 20% off your first month. Krell and Plex scrambled through the airlock behind their captain. As the door began to close, Drezz heard Captain Reynolds say something that would haunt his nightmares for cycles to come. Kevin, why don't you give them a goodbye song, something they'll remember us by? The last thing the pirates heard before the airlock sealed was Kevin enthusiastically launching into an off-key rendition of something called Never Gonna Give You Up, a melody so insidiously catchy that Drezz knew immediately it would never leave his brain. As they staggered onto the Crimson Talon, Drezz gave the order that no pirate captain ever wishes to give. Get us out of here, maximum speed, and someone find out how to decontaminate our auditory systems. 3 weeks after the Boundless Optimism incident, the Crimson Talon drifted through the backwater fringes of the Cygnus Theta sector. The once feared pirate vessel now made deliberate course adjustments to avoid shipping lanes, particularly those frequented by human transports. On the bridge, Captain Drezz Valknar slouched in his command chair, mandibles clicking idly as he stared at the star field on the view screen. Dark circles had formed under all 10 of his eyes, and his exoskeleton had lost its usual menacing luster. Captain, communications officer's Reap squeaked hesitantly, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Piracy Guild. Drezz's antenna twitched with mild interest. Put it through. The view screen flickered to show a Moldavian pirate lord, his tentacled face partially hidden beneath an elaborate space captain hat adorned with what appeared to be stolen jewelry. "Valknar," the pirate lord gurgled, "rumor has it you engaged a human vessel and survived. The guild demands to know, is it true what they say about humans, about why their ships travel alone?" Drezz straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. "Guild Master Blorg, what exactly have you heard?" "There are whispers," Blorg tentacled nervously, "that humans possess a weapon so terrible that regulations require it be transported in isolation from other vessels." Lieutenant Gorks, who had finally emerged from hibernation 3 days ago, still occasionally murmuring "baby shark" in his sleep, shuddered visibly. "It's worse than you can imagine." Silence. Drezz snapped. He leaned forward, contemplating his response. The Crimson Talon's reputation was already in tatters. Their hasty retreat from the Boundless Optimism had been witnessed by at least 2 passing merchant vessels. Within days, tales of their humiliation had spread throughout the sector's criminal underground. But perhaps there was an opportunity here, a chance to transform defeat into valuable intelligence. "Guild Master," Drezz began solemnly, "what I am about to tell you must be shared with all pirate vessels in the quadrant. The humans have developed something beyond conventional weaponry, something that targets the mind rather than the body." Blorg's tentacles writhed with curiosity. "Go on." "They call it Project Kevin, conversational entertainment vector for interspecies neutralization. A bioengineered human capable of inflicting critical psychological damage through weaponized tedium." "Preposterous," Blorg scoffed. "No species could weaponize boredom." "You weren't there," First Officer Krell hissed, her scales still pale from the trauma. 4 consecutive hours of fun facts about human dental hygiene followed by a live demonstration of something called flossing, both the dental procedure and the inexplicable dance move. "He made us watch 300 images of his pet feline," Weapons Officer Plex added hollowly, all 6 fingers trembling at the memory. "Each one virtually identical to the last, yet he insisted we acknowledge the unique personality captured in each image." Blorg's skepticism wavered. "But surely your neural defenses..." "Useless," Drezz interrupted. "The Kevin entity possesses an uncanny ability to identify and exploit psychological vulnerabilities across species barriers." My executive officer, a Zrelbian war veteran decorated for holding position under plasma bombardment for 6 planetary cycles, broke down in tears when subjected to something called a pun battle. The guild master's skin paled to a sickly lavender. This changes everything. If humans can deploy such weapons, it gets worse," Drezz continued, warming to his narrative. "We've discovered why human ships travel alone. It's not to protect other vessels from their weapons." "Then why?" Drezz leaned forward dramatically. "It's to protect the weapons from each other." A stunned silence followed this revelation. "Our intelligence suggests," Drezz improvised, "that each human vessel carries at least one Kevin-class entity. Some may carry multiple variants. Imagine, Guild Master, what would happen if 2 or more of these entities were to encounter each other." "Mutually assured conversation," Krell whispered ominously. "Precisely," Drezz nodded. "The resulting feedback loop of enthusiastic mediocrity could create a self-sustaining vortex of banality capable of rendering entire sectors uninhabitable." Guild Master Blorg's tentacles went limp with horror. "By the sacred voids, we had no idea." "Now you understand why I'm issuing this warning," Drezz declared with newfound authority. "The Crimson Talon willingly sacrificed its reputation to bring this intelligence to the Guild. Human vessels must be avoided at all costs." After the transmission ended, Navigator Blurm approached Drezz's command chair. "Captain, was it wise to spread such embellished information?" The part about multiple Kevins creating a conversational singularity seemed excessive. "It wasn't entirely untrue," Drezz defended, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "The human captain implied there were multiple levels of Kevin deployment. And better the Guild fears an imaginary catastrophe than discovers the truly humiliating reality, that we were defeated not by a super weapon, but by a middle-aged human in novelty clothing showing vacation slideshows." "Fair point," Blurm conceded. First Officer Krell slithered closer. "The question remains, Captain, what do we do now? Our reputation may be salvaged in the short term, but we can no longer raid human shipping lanes. The Crimson Talon is flagged in their database." Drezz rose from his command chair, his posture regaining some of its former confidence. "We adapt. The galaxy is vast. There are plenty of non-human targets for a crew of our specialized experience. And if we encounter humans again, Weapons Officer Plex asked nervously. Drezz's mandibles formed what passed for a grim smile among his species. We've developed countermeasures, emergency auditory blockers, meditation techniques to withstand conversational torture, and most importantly, he gestured toward a newly installed red button on the arm of his command chair, prominently labeled Kevin Protocol. What does it do? Zreep asked. It initiates an immediate hyperspace jump to maximum safe distance, automatically erases all logs of the encounter, and dispenses emergency rations of fermented Jovian fungus to help forget the experience. The bridge crew nodded in solemn approval of these precautions. Besides, Drezz added, settling back into his command chair, we now possess the most valuable commodity in the piracy business, information. For the right price, we can brief other captains on human defense systems, perhaps establish a consultation service for vessels contemplating human targets. Piracy adjacent, Krell observed with a flick of her tongue. Career evolution, Drezz corrected. After all, the most successful predators are not those with the sharpest claws, but those who learn which prey to avoid. As the Crimson Talon altered course toward more promising hunting grounds, an incoming transmission alert flashed on the communications console. Zreep checked the origin and froze. Captain, she squeaked, her voice barely audible. It's from the Boundless Optimism. The entire bridge crew went silent. Gorks began to solidify at the edges. Put it through, Drezz ordered, one claw hovering near the Kevin Protocol button. The view screen flickered to life, revealing not Captain Reynolds or First Officer Chen, but a familiar figure in a Gear's shirt emblazoned with cartoon Earth avocados wearing sunglasses. Hey pirate buddies, Kevin beamed, just checking in to see how you're doing. I realized I never got to show you my ultimate dad joke compilation, so I'm sending it along as a digital attachment. Also, great news, my podcast now has a special Space Pirate edition with discount code VALKNARTASTICS for 25% off the first year's subscription. Drezz's claw slammed down on the red button so hard it cracked his exoskeleton. As the Crimson Talon lurched into emergency hyperspace, alarms blaring and fermented fungus dispensing from hidden compartments throughout the ship, the final words they heard were Kevin's enthusiastic, "Don't forget to like and subscribe." Kevin out. And that, as they say throughout the galaxy, is why human ships always travel alone, not because they need protection from the dangers of space, but because the rest of space needs protection from them.